This video is sponsored by CubeWorks. Huge thanks to them for lending me this cube to try it out. Dayan has named their cube after the Chinese mythological character Nezha, who is typically portrayed as a boy who skates on fire wheels and uses a fire spear, hence the thumbnail. Cube comes in a packaging very similar to the Ultron WRM. It's a white box with a vertically lifting cover, and then the cube is on one side and the accessory pack is on the other. The accessories are slightly different, with the Ultron coming with an extra set of cards and a pamphlet which no one really bothers to check out, and the Nezha comes with the pair of plastic shell covers which don't even have a way to fit together, and it comes with a bag which this one could be useful for some people, but personally I would rather just carry the cube in this main box. The Ultron also comes with spare magnets which I used to corner magnetize my Ultron already, so this bag is now empty. While the Nezha comes with extra springs. The number one thing I like about the Dayan Nezha 5x5 is that it's really light and really fast, and its magnets are also closer to the weak side, which I definitely do prefer over something with stronger magnets such as an MGC or a Valk. This results in a cube that takes very little effort to turn, and at the same time the cube is not flimsy. It retains its cubic shape even though I'm turning fast. Forward corner cutting is very good, and it goes slightly over a full piece. Reverse corner cutting is quite limited, barely crossing 1/3 of a piece. When it comes to pops and deforming lockups, some people have reported deforming lockups, which I suspected it's mostly due to loose tensions, while I never heard anything about pops on this cube. But after I tensioned this cube properly, added basically my signature Dignitas Weight 3 Speedy loop combo, I've gotten a total of 0 pops and 0 deforming lockups on this cube. And I can make a deforming lockup happen on purpose, but I've yet to actually get one in a real solve. Take this with a pinch of salt though, because I like to tension cubes tighter than most people, and out of the top 4 5x5s, I would say the MGC is the only one that I actually get pops with. The Nezha pieces are also a little bit more beveled on the outside, making this cube similar to touch compared to an MGC. And in comparison, the Ultron and Valk are much flatter. I personally like the external touch of the Ultron and the Valk better. When it comes to mechanism, the Dayan Nezha actually looks extremely similar to the Valk 5, especially when you consider the distribution of colored plastic versus primary plastic. Basically, every piece of the cube that can be seen on the outside is made of colored plastic, but any parts that is not the outermost piece is just left in an undyed primary color, which in my opinion that's actually the best way to distribute the colors, because who's going to care about the whole bottom half, the centers, or the color of the corner stock? If they're not going to take part in your solve, you might as well don't dye that plastic. And it also gives a really clean and professional look. Other than that, the mechanism also looks really similar. So while it's generally true that most cubes are double anchored and just follow the original Alsu mechanism but change the proportions of the two anchors, the proportions of these two in particular are really similar. There's the exception of some really minor differences, like the Valk 5's middle layer has a wider wing, while the Nezha's wing is slightly narrower. And the Valk 5 generally pushes most of its features outwards and has a narrower corner stock, and the Nezha itself has a wider corner stock and slightly wider neck to the wing pieces. And also this one is just a separate feature of the Valk 5. There's this trench all the way here. This is the reverse footlock mechanism, where pieces that belong to the second layer have this extra hook here that will sit inside this trench and make the piece harder to pop out. This mechanism is generally absent from most other cubes, and the Nezha is no exception. It does not have this reverse foot locking mechanism that the Valk 5 kind of has. Comparing the cores of these two cubes, they are also the same ESL core. You can tell that it has a very narrow 6-point structure, and it's reinforced by all those ribs in between. I would say all 4 of the major 5x5s on the market use this core, which when I say all 4, it's these two plus the MGC and the Ultron. WR. Although I do think the MGC's core is a little bit smaller in size, but it just looks like the same core with the same features. Another unique thing about the Nezha that I don't really find elsewhere is you can actually see how high the core, you can actually see how high the centerpiece is floating above the core. Like with other cubes, the centerpiece is almost touching the core itself. But with the Nezha, it's actually floating a little bit above, and you can see the bare screw. It's a little bit different from the MGC because the MGC totally has no center stock, and the edges, the pieces that belong to the second layer, like these two centers here, actually expand all the way to the middle. Whereas in the Nezha, you don't see that. It's just the core is the center is floating, but it's not exactly stockless. And another very notable thing about the Nezha is just how thin the plastic is compared to other brands. So, like, this is how it compares with the Valk. You can see that the Valk is actually a little bit thicker. And this is how it compares with the Ultron WR. Almost the same, but I would say the Nezha's plastic is still slightly thinner. And just for fun, this is just Ultron and Valk. I would say that the Valk has the thickest plastic of the three, followed by the Ultron and then the Nezha. And yeah, you can also see the cross-sectional internal. The Ultron and the Valk has this extra reinforcement rib, but the Nezha has completely done away with it. There are also a whole lot of similarities between how the Dayan Nezha and the Valk 5M like hollow out their internal parts and put on their anti-stick design. So I think it's especially similar when it comes to this particular piece here, the T-center. Both cubes have two holes on this side. But on the opposite side, it's slightly different because the Valk 5 has one extra hole down here that the Nezha doesn't have. And then when it comes to the X center, there's an extra hole on the top here for the Nezha and one extra hole on a few extra holes on the side here for the Valk. When it comes to the midges, they both have two stripes below and two stripes on top. And when it comes to the corners, of course the Valk 5 has the reverse footlock mechanism, so it has a hollow base, whereas the Nezha has a solid base, but it did cut a hollow hole down here. And then on the upper side of the base, there's actually a bit of anti-stick track running for both of these cubes. I think the main difference is on the top. While the anti-stick design is put in the same place, the Valk 5 is the traditional arc. Nezha has this wavy pattern as the anti-stick design. For the wings, it's also the same. 3 stripes on the inside, no stripes on the outside. Comparing across the top 4 fiber plies, even though it looks a lot like the Valk 5, and my memory of the MGC is quite rusty, I would quite agree with some people who said that the Nezha feels like an MGC. The MGC has this soft glidey feel, while the Valk 5 is a lot more crunchy. The Nezha is somewhere in the middle, but more like the MGC. It is a little bit more solid and stable, and also a bit more controllable than the MGC, but it is much faster and silkier than the Valk. Both the Valk and the MGC also have stronger magnets, and the snapping feel is more noticeable, while the Nezha's magnetic snap is much more subtle, and is closer to the Ultron WRM. Personally, I like the weak magnets. Ultron, on the other hand, can't really be compared with the other 3, meaning because it offers totally different turning style. It's 61mm while the other 3 are 62mm. It's a lot more flexible, allowing for better transitioning between turns and a less rigid feel, but it also sacrifices stability as a result. It makes it less favourable for aggressive turning styles. So I can't really recommend either the Ultron or the Nezha above each other. It's really dependent on your turning style. If you like the fluid turning style, go with the Ultron. And if you like the more stable turning style, like between the Valk 5, Nezha and MGC, I would actually recommend the Nezha if you have the money, and the MGC if you have a tighter budget. I do think the Nezha is a slight upgrade over the MGC with its slightly better stability and better resistance to pops. For the Valk, I'm a little bit doubtful because Qi discontinued the Valk brand, plus the cube is also a little bit different with its slower speed and stronger magnets. So if you want that feel but somehow cannot find a Valk 5 anymore, you can try to get a Nezha and loop it with slower loop like Just Loop Y81, but unfortunately the magnet slots are not flat and you can't really stack a second magnet on top. Overall, the Nezha is my second favourite Fiber 5, right after my core magnetic Ultron WRM, and I might go even as far as to say that I prefer it over the base form Ultron, but that's really subjective, and also my memory of the base form Ultron is quite rusty since it's been ages since I actually tried one. I just feel that the magnetic core makes the Ultron a lot more stable while still keeping the same fluidity, essentially ripping the best of both turning styles. with the more stable feeling of like the Falk 5 Nerja and MGC without its rigidity, and the more fluid feeling of the Ultron WRM without the instability. However, as explained in an earlier video, I made the magnetic core of my Ultron overpowered and slowed down the cube too much, and I just wish I made it a bit weaker. However, every time I do 2 sessions with the Nerja and the Ultron side by side, the Ultron usually comes out on top, usually by about 2 seconds. Overall, I would say that the Nerja is a nicer practice cube, being more effortless to turn and therefore letting you sustain your standard for more solves in a row. For the Ultron, at least the magnetic core version is a better competition cube, performing better against nerves and shaky hands. And also, its reverse corner cutting is 3 times as strong as the Nerja. Would a magnetic core improve the Nerja? I would say no, or at least it would just improve the controllability just a little bit. The magnetic core is most useful for providing a force that opposes the deformation out of the cube shape. This works best with the Ultron WRM and the Shadow V2M. Whereas for more stable cubes, they tend to have less to benefit from, since the mechanism already does not allow the cube to deform out of the cube shape.